NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning, I'm Hethel Butt, in for Ann Schindler. It's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Our topics today: the governor wraps his push to cut state property taxes in criticism of Jacksonville's budget. A change in leadership at the University of North Florida could be in the works as its current president looks to move south. A brand new state law requires landlords to disclose prior flooding to renters. And an annual report reveals an increase in local domestic violence homicides. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, John Daigle, political consultant and former city politics reporter. Good morning.
Morning.
Madelyn Schneider, University of North Florida student and editor-in-chief of the Spinnaker. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nikesha Williams, producer of the Black and Published podcast and most recently author of the Seven Daughters of Dupree. Thanks for joining us again, Nikesha.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Good to see you again, David.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay, so let's start with the story that's been getting a lot of attention. David, you covered the press conference at the airport on Wednesday. The governor and the state CFO were there. So the mayor was sort of there, too. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, good way of putting it. So if you've been to the Jacksonville International Airport, there's a 7-foot-tall refrigerator-sized box that is referred to sometimes as a hologram of the mayor. It's not really a hologram. This is not like Star Wars or Star Trek and that kind of thing, but it's basically a video of her, and she is welcoming visitors, travelers to Jacksonville, and it's a large, almost life-size image of her. So during this news conference that Governor DeSantis and this state CFO, Blaise Ingoglia, had, they were standing right next to it. So they were talking while the mayor was talking. Of course, she was muted, and they were basically arguing that this is particular proto box, as it's called, was $75,000 of wasteful government spending, as they're trying to make the argument that local government spending is out of control and there needs to be property tax reform relief for property taxpayers.
But this is not a new issue. So why did the governor bring it up now? This hologram came out that last December. So why now?
Yeah, I think the why now is they really are at the state level. Governor DeSantis and the CFO are kind of drum up support for what will be on the November 2026 ballot, some type of change in property tax system, whether larger exemptions, changes in how assessments are done, who knows. It's not going to get rid of it entirely, but it will make changes to it. So to the extent that they can sort of create the sense that we need property tax relief because local government is wasting your money, that could potentially be an argument to get it on the ballot. And then it wouldn't be surprising to see something like this come up in the campaign too in 2026. So that's what it's all about. It's all about trying to creating the framework for what they want to do at the state level to change property tax system.
Yeah, and that's, David kind of mentioned my big problem with this Florida Doge effort. And again, I kind of tend to look at things from a political lens. And I think a lot of this is, as David pointed out, about getting something on the ballot for 26 or 28 that brings out their base. I mean, that's in this hyper-partisan environment, that's become a lot of the political game is what can you have on the ballot that does turnout. It's not so much about messaging. It's more about turnout these days. And I think this is really about what can they put on the ballot that will help them with turnout in those elections. It seems so disingenuous and hypocritical to me. I mean, you see the CFO taking this publicity tour around the state, pointing out, waste, fraud, and abuse with about stuff that was readily available before, going anywhere. They had all this data before they did this tour. And the fact that they're seems to be only hitting Democrat-run cities. I mean, look at the cities where he's done press conferences: Jacksonville, Orlando, Broward County, Gainesville, St. Pete. These are, is it a coincidence? It's just super obvious that this is meant as the beginning of a political campaign or part of a campaign aimed at partisan efforts. And I think intelligent people just really see it as a taxpayer-funded campaign designed to, discourage one party or to disparage one party over the other.
And let me ask you this. Do you think that this is unusual spending for the city of Jacksonville? Do other cities do these type of things at airports?
It's unusual in the sense that you have this technology. I mean, anybody can go to an airport, you get to leave the airport, you might see a welcome to whatever city it is from the mayor. That's a typical thing. The idea of having something like this where you have this $75,000 proto box, that's unusual. And the city would say it's trying to make it interesting, appealing, promote the city, obviously kind of convey this idea that Jacksonville's this place where technology is embraced. And so they're trying to promote the city in a different way. And so it is both not unusual and unusual in terms of how they're doing this message.
And they did point out that it was also supporting a women-owned business and that this was a company it's gotten a lot of attention for their work. So they're trying to show that they are kind of advanced in that. They also pointed out that this, in their opinion, isn't unusual that lots of cities use their airports with billboards of the mayor or other local officials. Did you want to add to that, Nikesha?
Yes, every city has a welcome message. Like you fly through Hartsfield, Jackson, and in Atlanta, which most of us have to do because there's no direct flights from Jacksonville to many places. And the first thing you hear is like a message from the mayor welcoming you to Atlanta. It's not a hologram box or a video projection, but it's still a welcome message. You go to any airport, Chicago Midway, Chicago O'Hare, Denver, Spokane, Portland. All of these airports have some mechanism to welcome travelers to their city. But beyond that, we're focusing on the hologram. But it's just as John said, like drumming up support for your base to come out for a property tax reform measure in 2026 has nothing to do with you targeting all Democratic cities about wasteful spending, because beyond the hologram, they're targeting $7.5 million in sidewalks, as if Jacksonville doesn't need more sidewalks in areas where there aren't any, in a city where we have an abundance of pedestrian deaths and bicycle deaths, and then $1.9 million in grants to art focus groups who they label as DEI. This is a city that has for years been trying to establish itself as a major hub for arts and technology and for engineering and for the medicine industry, where we have medical tourism and all these different things. And yet this governor is disparaging those very efforts to support those industries as being wasteful spending to drum up support for state level property tax reform. One has nothing to do with the other. You are trying to flex and exercise your power in humble Democratic cities and Democratic mayors so that you can make yourself look more puffed up and esteemed in the eyes of your base, as if you are doing the bidding of the person at the head of the federal administration, which you are a lame duck governor. There's someone else running and is going to be taking the mantle of the state of Florida, and yet you're trying to make sure that the state stays within the very red margin of error that is necessary to maintain control and power in an authoritarian nation. And that's what's really happening. And people need to see that one has absolutely nothing to do with the other, except being a wasteful spending, taxpayer funded trip to try to point out something that is not harmful in Democratic led cities.
If you're just joining us, I'm Hethel Butt in for Ann Schindler, and we're talking about this week's headlines with David Bowerland, Nikesha Williams, Madelyn Schneider, and John Daigle. We do have some callers on the line. You can also join the conversation at 904-549-2937. Again, that's 904-549-2937, or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And just keep in mind, you can also watch this program live stream now on Facebook and WJCT's YouTube page. We want to go ahead and go to a caller right now on line 1. This is Steve from Atlantic Beach, and he says DeSantis is playing to his local audience. Good morning, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, you stole my line. Good morning.
Well, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Sure. I'm just kidding. This is a direct attack on Donna Deegan. He's playing to his sycophant, his base in Jacksonville, his political base, by attacking what is truly a work of future communication, that we luckily have our mayor smart enough to use a hologram technology to welcome visitors to our city. And I just think it's a continuing part. He's in touch with the political forces in Jacksonville, and I think he's playing to them with this attack. And plain and simple, and it's just cheap the way he is doing it.
Thank you for your call, Steve. Let me ask you this: do you think that give us an idea of what the mayor's response was to this?
Yeah, the mayor's response was, first of all, it's not a waste of money. It does, as you mentioned before, it supports a local Jacksonville business. It emphasizes our growth as a technology hub. She also had an interesting argument that if you want to look at what's causing the city to spend money, they've spent, I think it was over 1,000 hours of staff time cooperating, complying with this state DOGE effort, scrutiny of the state government. And she's saying, look, in terms of the value of that staff time we spent on that far exceeds the $75,000 that was spent on the hologram. So I think her argument is she uses the idea it's a partisan attack, the idea that, and also the argument that, okay, you can talk about wasteful spending if that's what they want to talk about, but $75,000 in a $2 billion budget, I think they put it in decimal points. I felt like I was back in high school algebra in terms of how many decimal points you have to go over to actually show what this is. It's a small drop in a big bucket. And so maybe it's a symbol, maybe it's something you can sort of, people identify with that. But if you look at the nuts and bolts of city government, they have a long way to go to show, as they keep saying, that there's $200 million of waste in the city's budget.
And they did also point out some of the efforts that they've made to cut their budget and cut costs themselves in terms of staffing hours and things like that. They also pointed out this was money that came from permitting. Is that something that's unusual?
No, I mean, I don't know in terms of how unusual that is, and I don't really have any problem with DeSantis, attacking a Democrat and pointing out what he considers wasteful spending. My big problem with this, the same problem I had with DeSantis using taxpayer money to fight the recreational marijuana amendment. Republicans don't have a problem with typically with collecting money. I mean, they are really good with the dark money game. I have a problem, the same problem I had this week when the federal administration was putting out messaging using taxpayer-funded channels. And that's what I see this CFO effort here. He's using taxpayer money to conduct a campaign to hurt his partisan opponents. DeSantis has a big stage. He does not need to spend taxpayer money to do political campaigns.
Let's go to a caller, Charles from the West Side. Charles, good morning.
Good morning. What really irritates me, and maybe we can bring this up as a talking point to fight back on the narrative, is all of these college presidents that have been awarded these plum jobs that are starting anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a year, plus like $1 million bonus if they hit certain targets. Can't we point out? I just did a quick. It's almost $2.5 million. So that would be some good ammunition to fight back, don't you think? And also, as a side note, in Pensacola, the CFO is criticizing their neon welcome to Pensacola sign, and he said, why don't we they should change it to welcome to Wasteville or something like that. So it's getting silly. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for your call, Charles. And I will add in Orlando, they criticized hot yoga for the staff. So it has been something that they've been doing, across the state. In terms of this property tax issue and cutting property taxes, do you think that's something that's going to get on the ballot?
I do. I think it will, and it will get on the November 2026 ballot. The question is, what form will it take? How much of a difference will be? It does seem like it's going to be geared towards homeowners, people who live in their homes, and finding some way to lower their property tax burden. But yes, I definitely think we're going to have it in November 2026.
And who benefits from that politically? If the governor's not running again, then who benefits from that?
Well, I think John would probably point out there is going to be an election for governor. Somebody's going to replace him. And I think there's already been some signals from the state leadership that they really want to make housing affordability a top of the mind issue. And that's just, and it is a big issue. People are concerned about what it costs to own a home these days.
Housing affordability is a big issue and one that should be taken on. But if we talk about who stands to gain something from the property tax rate, if you think beyond the outside immediate factor of homeowners will have some tax relief burden, unlike what the Jacksonville City Council is doing with our property taxes, what really is happening here is that property taxes is how we fund public education. So if you reduce the burden of property taxes, you also reduce the amount of funding that goes toward public education, which has been a key goal not only of the state administration, but also of the federal administration that is still trying to dismantle the Department of Education. So this is a further attack, I think, in my opinion, on public education, defunding it and then funneling funds into private and charter schools to run education more like businesses, to decentralize it so that there is no longer one curriculum, and then to chastise local governments and local school boards and superintendents for not doing what they can for students in public schools with reduced funding, which we already know has continued to happen as this administration has continued to funnel money and gut public education and fund it into charter schools and voucher programs that only continue to hurt students in public education. So I think that's the real ploy here, but nobody's going to say that part except me.
Yeah, and I actually had that right down on my notes. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that has been a long-term, decade-old battle, and I do believe that that there is a connection. It's a subtle connection, but the effort on the right to cut property taxes has a direct impact. And I think it's an intentional impact in terms of what it's going to do to public school funding. And I think there is a long-standing battle to shift funding from traditional public schools to charter schools.
Because if people really cared about making housing affordable, they would change zoning laws and covenants and allow for not just single-family dwellings, but multifamily dwellings like triplexes and duplexes in more areas than they do. And that's not what's happening.
And they did mention that the property taxes, if they were to cut them, would not apply to people who are not residents of the state of Florida. I did want to kind of mention we had this whole contentious budget hearing with the city of Jacksonville and the city council. And then we had the announcement yesterday. Karen Bowling, the chief administrative officer for the mayor Deegan's office, announced that she'll be stepping down October 24th. Do we know why she stepped down, and was it related to any of this that's been going on lately?
We don't know why at this point she's stepping down. And actually her effective employment ends October 24th. Her last day on the job was actually October 1st, which was Wednesday, I believe. So don't know why. I mean, on the one hand, it's not unusual for people to move on. This is a real pressure cooker environment you have working on the fourth floor of City Hall. So there's always staff turnover in the mayor's office. This one, at least for me, was a little bit unexpected and doesn't seem to have a long transition period in terms of the announcement and preparing a way for the next whoever's going to take over as the chief administrative officer. And it sounds like from the mayor's office, those ultimate decisions are not going to take place until after the holidays.
And it sounds like Deputy Chief Administrative Officer Kelly O'Leary will remain in the role and with the support of Chief of Staff Mike Weinstein. Has Bowling announced her next steps?
She hasn't. No.
And can I ask you, is this something that, because she is somebody that has gotten, great compliments from both political parties, from people on city council. What do you think will be her legacy in terms of her leadership for the mayor's office?
Yeah, I mean, Karen's got a fantastic reputation, as you said, on kind of a bipartisan support for her. And again, I'm not inside City Hall the way David is, but I tend to try to read between the lines. And the story that WJCT had on it this morning, as I was listening, I thought it was very curious. The story mentioned that there was a meeting, and then she essentially resigned with a text message, which to me says there's something going on behind the scenes. That's not the way someone like Karen would typically handle this. And also the fact that it seemed to be a surprise because they don't have anybody lined up to take that job. They're not going to try to fill it till after the holidays. It just seems to me that there is obviously something more going on that is not obvious on the surface.
Anything to add to that, David? Any
Yeah,
speculation?
no, I agree with John. I mean, yeah, it's unusual, obviously, to have your resignation notice done by a text message and not have a plan in place already for who will replace that person. So, to what extent this was something they've been talking about prior to this, I'm really not sure. It does raise some interesting questions in terms of how that the staff at the mayor's level, because that's a high-level position for sure.
Well, let's move on now to a possible leadership change at UNF. Madelyn, this is a story you've been working very closely on. The Spinnaker broke the news about this earlier this week. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, President Moez Lamayam at University of North Florida, he announced that he was the sole finalist for the USF presidency, and it was it was a big shock to me, and I think it was a huge shock to students, and majorly a shock amongst faculty, but I think some faculty were skeptical of it, and before he announced it, there were rumors going around about it. So, but I think it's very unknown right now, and there's not a lot more that we know other than that he's the sole finalist.
And we don't know when we'll have a decision on when he got the job. Or if he gets the job.
So he has to go through the Board of Governors confirmation after this. But basically, from how I understand it, USF has approved him to go in front of the Board of Governors. They announced it to their campus as well. And when that's heard, that could take several months. What was interesting to me was just recently they also canceled the October Board of Governors meeting, and they moved the location of the November Board of Governors meeting to USF. So I don't know if that is where it will take place, but that was just a detail that I noticed.
Can you talk a little bit about his accomplishments at UNF, what he was able to establish and accomplish in his time at UNF?
Yeah, so President Lamayam, he was the 7th president, I believe, at UNF. He one of his biggest goals, I went to a faculty association meeting yesterday, and he was there actually answering some questions with faculty. But one of the biggest goals he accomplished, I think, was kind of setting more of a vision for what UNF is going to be in the future. He put it in the faculty meeting that he was when he first got to UNF, he said something like they were not really sure what the vision for the university was, and he kind of laid out the groundwork for that. Whether or not that's true, I'm not super sure. I've only been a student at UNF for 2 years now, but I do know that his strategic plan definitely consists of growing the institution. His big goal of 25,000 students enrolled by 2028, that was the biggest goal. Becoming an R1 institution. He really wanted to put an emphasis on research, it seemed, and making UNF the destination of choice is always their big thing that they're saying there.
Lamayam will go before the same board that rejected president candidate for University of Florida and former University of Michigan president Santo Ono, despite him being the sole finalist by UF trustees. Do you see that he might face the same type of challenges?
I don't want to say whether or not he will or will not face those same type of challenges, but I think that's definitely a big worry amongst faculty, staff, other administrators. Um, you know, just like we saw with Santa Ono, they announced that he was the sole finalist, right? And then he went in front of the Board of Governors and he was not approved. So I think, it's definitely a point of anxiety for sure for faculty and administration at UNF right now, because I think a lot of people were hoping that the president was going to hold out until the end of the DeSantis administration, and that clearly is not going to be the case.
No, I just have a question. So, like, if he's not approved for USF, would he still retain as the president of UNF?
As far as I know, I think he would, but that's kind of unclear. I think, yeah, he would.
because he hasn't officially resigned from
Right.
that position.
Right.
Okay,
I
well,
kind
if
of I kind of think that he'll do fine with getting it. Just and maybe the political environment has changed, but he's been vetted. He's been approved uh, by the state board of governors to be the president of the University of North Florida.
Mhm.
He's well known at the University of South Florida. Um, I just have a feeling that it's kind of like when you go through the Senate confirmation process and then you go back through the Senate confirmation process, unless there's something that's happened at the University of North Florida since he was appointed, which I don't think there is. I would expect him to get that job and he'll be the next president of the University of South Florida.
And you have to imagine that these universities do their due diligence to make sure that they're selecting somebody that will get through the process when they're making these selections.
Even more so after what happened with the University of Florida's pick.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to comment on this week's news, we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 and send us an email if you'd like at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Now we want to talk a little bit about October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. A new local report shows a rise in domestic violence homicides last year. Nikesha, what do the latest numbers tell us about the trends in domestic violence here in our community?
So the numbers are showing us that over the last couple years, that of course there's been an increase in domestic violence, and that what domestic violence advocates are asking for is that the community take more of an active part and role in pointing out the signs of intimate partner violence, for the simple fact that when it leads to domestic violence homicides, that has not been the first instance of domestic violence with that particular abuser and their victim, or if it's a survivor, if they've managed to survive. And so it's requiring and asking that all of us do our part. And so the numbers have gone up, but they are not as high as they were from 2023, where there were about 6,000 instances of it. But and when we talk about homicides, what they're pointing out is that of the, I believe, 14 homicides for 2024, guns were used in, I believe, about all of them. And the easy access to a firearm makes it more likely that victims in a intimate partner violence situation will be murdered with that firearm because it's already accessible. And then we also knowing that we have a gun problem in this country, and that some of the prerequisites for owning a firearm have been rolled back, such as like you cannot have a DV record. That those protections don't really exist anymore. And so it's highlighting this trend where these numbers are going up, but the protections that used to be in place to try to protect victims are not there. And so then calling on the community to step up and do their part, which I do believe the community has a role to play. Neighbors often know when there are instances of intimate partner violence in a home, and some people may chalk it up to, that's not my business, or that's between them. They don't want to get involved. But when you look at the statistics and people who end up in abusive relationships, leaving is when they are most likely to be put at risk of fatality and of death. And it takes someone in an intimate partner violence situation up to 7 times to be able to successfully leave their abuser. And if every time they are attempting to leave, they are at risk of their life being taken from them with a firearm by their abuser, it makes it more, the rationale then becomes it may be easier to stay and endure, and neighbors then may have the sense that, well, if they really wanted to leave, they would just do so, and that's not the case.
How do you get people to change that behavior and speak up?
It's kind of the same thing that you do when you talk about abusive children. And granted, there's another layer of carceral infrastructure for that with the Child Protective Services. But like you have mandated reporters when you see children who are being abused, whether it's teachers or nurses or anything like that. That does not exist within intimate partner relationships because both people are adults. But if people have to realize that what's happening in intimate partner violence is not only just the physical abuse, it's also verbal abuse. It's also mental and emotional abuse. It may also be financial abuse where the person who is being victimized has absolutely no control and no power over their own lives. They don't have the money to leave. They don't have the means to escape. They may have low self-esteem and that they think that they may deserve what they are getting or this person that they're with is the best they can do. There's so many different layers and levels to the abuse that when someone does begin to say, I want to go, I need to get help, the infrastructure doesn't seem to be there to like readily help them, as well as the community they're eroded from because a lot of ways that people are abused is in isolation. So then if you continue to think that there is no one there to help you, there's no one there to care, there's no one in your neighborhood who you can go to without, turning you back over to your abuser or your family is not a safe place, it becomes very daunting of a task to leave. And yet still when people do decide to leave, they are at risk of death. And so getting people to change their minds about how this is a problem for the entire community to handle is getting the community to realize what's at stake for those victims who are in intimate partner violence situations in the first place, where they are mentally, emotionally, financially, and why they need someone to say, I can help you, or I see you, or I'm not going to turn away and act like I don't see your black eyes or your scars or your makeup that's trying to cover it all.
These findings that we're talking about were announced by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and Hubbard House, which is a local domestic violence center. And just to kind of highlight what we are talking about, 5,442 domestic violence cases this year alone. Of those, in 2024, 19 people died in 14 domestic violence homicides, and 82%, as you had kind of talked about, of partner homicides, the suspect and victim were living together. So as you were kind of talking about, not only does somebody around those people know what's happening, but also let's talk about the issue of mental health and substance abuse, because those are also major concerns.
Yeah, like when you talk about substance abuse, alcohol and drugs fuel situations. And so, you know, people, some abusers get drunk, and the way that they have an outlet is that they become mean and nasty and abusive. And so all of those issues are at play. And again, we have to look at substance abuse as an addiction and a health issue and not just a criminal one. And so if someone is addicted to a substance or is using mind altering substances, there's a reason why, but there's also an addictive level to that. And then that substance is then altering their mind and their behavior and turning them into a kind of person that may be more abusive than they would be if they were sober. All of that is at play, as well as the mental health of whoever is their victim. Again, it's a hand in glove situation, and it's one where there needs to be more support in terms of abusers who have substance abuse issues going into like addiction recovery programs, as well as support for the victims who have outlets to go to and a means to escape where they can get not only the mental help that they need, but then also the help that they need in terms of reestablishing their lives.
Madelyn, let me ask you this, because you deal with a lot of students. Is this something that they're training students for in the college level of how to deal with this and what to do if you become a victim?
Yeah, actually, I think we have a what's called a dean of students office at UNF, and they're very supportive for students who are going through crisis, any type of crisis situation, and they do have a lot of resources as well for like substance abuse and things like that. So, and I do believe even in the past, I know people in our student government have presented initiatives. They've done, I believe they've done I don't know if it's yearly, but they have done multiple times Narcan training for, because that is a situation that a lot of people may be put in at some point at, a party or something like that. So I think it's definitely a concern that they're trying to address at UNF, even if it's in small ways.
And there are some local resources if you or someone you love is in a domestic violence situation. Hubbard House is a local domestic violence center serving Duval and Baker counties. They have a 24-hour hotline. Just call 904-354-3114, or you can text 904-210-3698. Now we want to go on to some new laws that went into effect Wednesday. We're talking about 30 new laws, many related to crime and law enforcement. And John, a lot of changes. Which ones will have the most impact?
Well, I came prepared to talk about a few of the new laws that were passed by the legislature last spring, but then listening to this most recent conversation about the disturbing trends on domestic abuse and substance misuse, the one that jumps out at me was a new law that went into effect last week that wasn't passed by the legislature, but a result of a court decision at the first DCA, which was the open carry law, which now Florida is an open carry state. And there's a lot of confusion about that right now. And I think about, with what we're hearing about domestic violence and we know the disturbing trends on substance misuse. And now a lot of people are trying to interpret this new open carry law. And there's controversy and debate about whether it just applies to handguns or whether it applies to shotguns and long barrel rifles. And business owners like myself, I don't know what would happen if a client walked into my office this afternoon with a rifle strapped over his back. I don't know if legally I can tell him you can't come in my office with carrying a rifle. So I think that's a big law. There are a lot of other ones I know time is short. There's one of the other ones I really want to talk about is a fantastic new law passed by local representative Jennifer Bradley and her bill that ended up with Tristan Murphy's law, which is a fantastic new law that allows law enforcement a lot of new discretion on separating what is a mental health issue and what is a criminal issue, and gives law enforcement a lot of new tools for not arresting people who are dealing with mental health crisis. Northeast Florida, not many people know, but we've been a national leader in peer resource training, taking people with lived experiences and putting them with police officers and letting them go out on these mental health crises. Full disclosure, one of our clients, LSF Health Systems, has been training people with these lived experiences to do this, and it's made a huge impact. Law enforcement love it, and that Tristan Murphy's law is going to be a really good thing for helping law enforcement deal with people going through mental health crisis.
And as you mentioned, Tristan Murphy, who took his own life in a Florida prison in 2021, became the subject of a CBS documentary that explored the treatment of mentally ill prisoners in the state. There was also some new laws around flood disclosures when it comes to properties. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that is we talked. There was a brief mention about the affordable housing crisis, and I think that this is a law that will help renters, and especially renters who are moving into property that may have property. And I think it's a good thing. Obviously, more information when you're renting property is good. There's a lot of issues in that area, but as opposed to like property tax relief for homeowners, which was just kind of a regressive move, this is more of a progressive move, and I think it will help. There's a huge problem with available rental space and affordable rental space, and I see this as something that will help in that problem area.
And what about this troopers law? Is this really something that they've had an issue with in the state of Florida?
Yeah, I don't know much. My recollection is that has to do with animal cruelty.
Right. It's a third-degree felony now for people who restrain dogs outside during natural disasters. Is that something
I'm not aware that
they would
was
even
a
need a
huge
law
problem
for that.
in Florida. It sounds more like something that was designed to make one part of their base happy. I'm not really sure what the background is, and I don't know that that's been a problem.
I'm not sure either. Maybe it's where there's a hurricane coming and someone puts their dog on a leash outside, and the dog then is left at the mercy of the elements.
Yeah, we did see some examples. I think we saw a lot of examples of that last year when the hurricane came through Asheville. I remember seeing video on TV of animals chained up outside in the yard and their owners had fled. So I really don't know the whole background behind that.
You would not think there would need to be a new law for that, but here we are. David Bauerlein, Nikesha Williams, Madelyn Schneider, and John Daigle, thanks for being here. Up next, a local staging of the Eugene O'Neill classic, A Moon for the Misbegotten. A behind-scenes look when we come back.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com.
Vaccine misinformation is everywhere. Who should you trust? I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
I'm Ana Maria Sayer.
And I'm Robin Hilton.
Next time on Tiny Desk Radio. concerts from Tiny Desk contest winners.
Music from the very first winner, Fantastic Negrito.
Also spoken word and music from Tank and the Bangas.
Plus, this year's winner, rapper-singer Ruby Ibarra.
That's all next time on Tiny Desk Radio from NPR Music.
Tomorrow at 7 here on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, health insurance and a government shutdown. Republicans and Democrats are at odds over the federal budget thanks to extra money millions of Floridians use to help pay for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. Cutting the extra subsidies is expected to lead to much higher monthly premiums. So do you rely on Obamacare for your health care coverage? How much do you pay? And is this battle worth shutting down the federal government? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Both parties dig in their heels and the U.S. government grinds to a halt. On the next Friday News Roundup, how the shutdown could end, who suffers in the meantime, plus...
I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military.
A new vision for the U.S. military? We talk about it on the News Roundup. Next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. All Beaches Experimental Theater is proud to present Eugene O'Neill's towering classic, A Moon for the Misbegotten, directed by Tyler Hammond. ABET's artistic director, Rains Carr, joins us this morning. And Rains, why is this such a powerful piece of theater?
Eugene O'Neill is one of our great American writers. He won the Nobel Prize. He's a four-time, Pulitzer Prize winner. He died young. He's from a famous theatrical family, and he wrote about subjects that just weren't written about at the time in the American theater. And this is the exploration of the interior of a person. And this play was produced originally in the 1940s, and it still resonates today about the connection between two people in one long night they have together. It's about a man going back and trying to find himself, having sort of lost himself. So I think it still resonates very powerfully in the world. And Eugene O'Neill's words are just so well written, so powerful, that I think it's something that needs to continually be shared. And this play hasn't been done in this area in over 15 years.
What excites you about bringing this show to the WJCT studios?
I love WJCT Studios. It's a wonderful venue, and it's a nice central location for us. We are in the middle of a sort of nomadic period where this is the beginning of our 34th season. We are spending it traveling around the city of Jacksonville to try and make our way home back to Atlantic Beach. We're looking at properties in Atlantic Beach right now, and so we decided, hey, why don't we go on the road all over town, show everybody in town what we can do, not just in our little home area. And so bringing something here in this central location and this nice little entertainment hub that we have downtown is a really exciting prospect. And so WJCT has been really lovely with us, very amenable. And so we're really excited to have a little nice, intimate piece of theater here at the studio.
What do you hope the audience members take away from this production?
I really hope they take away that in this community, we have a lot of amazing artists. We have a lot of amazing actors. We have a lot of amazing designers. We have a lot of amazing directors. And that this is a volunteer-based system, and the only person being paid is me. And so this is our community coming together to tell a story. And so it's really exciting to let the audience see what the community is capable of.
And there's limited seating. That's intentional.
It is intentional. It's an intimate show. We don't want to put it in a big, huge, it's not Beauty and the Beast. We don't want to put it in a big, huge house. It's an intimate little show. It's mostly two people talking, and it's about what's going on inside of them. And so you want to have it in a small place, in a nice, tiny little setting. So we've got about 50 seats per show, and that'll be a packed house in the studio here. And so it is very limited. That means only 300 people can see the entire run of the show. And we typically do 400, 500, 600, 700 people come see a show. So if you're out there, you need a ticket, get one before they're all gone.
Let me ask you this, just a big picture in
Sure.
terms of the art scene in Jacksonville. A lot of cities right now are kind of experiencing a little bit of attack on the arts in terms of
Mhm.
funding. What are you seeing here?
Here in Jacksonville, we actually surprisingly have a really wonderful, robust arts scene. And I was just at the Cultural Council on Monday where they were doing the granting process, and they were excited that they could give out millions and millions of dollars of public funds to the arts. And our organization is one of the ones that did receive funds, which is really exciting. And there were 30 other organizations also that had applied that were able to get funds from the city. So the city of Jacksonville prides itself on, being a sustainable place for the arts. And it has been. I mean, our company has been here for 34 years as a sustainable theater company. Theater Jacksonville has been here for 106 years. So this city is a place where the arts can thrive, particularly the theatrical arts. This is when I grew up here. There was maybe 3 or 4 places you could go to see theater outside of the artist series downtown here. And now it's an explosion. I mean, there's theater everywhere. There's 10, 15, 20 places you can go see theater in this town at any one given time.
So walk us a little bit through the plot of this play and give us an idea of why people should come and watch it.
So this is, we don't often do these type of classic plays, and I find it important to remember our heritage and rediscover. Part of my mission as an artist is to rediscover classic works and why they're classic, not just as museum pieces of like, oh, look here, this is a famous thing that we did one time, and isn't it nice? We want to actually go back in, rediscover why it was so powerful, why it endures. So this is a man, James Tyrone Jr. He's going back to visit some old friends at a small house in Connecticut, and he reconnects with a Irish-American family, of which the daughter he is friends with. I don't want to give away too much of what happens in this piece, but it's basically a reconnection of them rediscovering who they are and what they can be under the moonlight in this moon for the misbegotten, right? These misbegotten people. And it's just an interesting type of writing that we don't really do anymore. And so it's good to know that there's still an audience for this type of work. This type of work can still resonate with artists that were not born in the 1930s, that people that were born in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s can still connect with this type of piece.
Is it drama, comedy, a little?
It's a little bit of both. It's a drama. I would say it's a dramedy because it does have a lot of fun in it as well.
Well, performances run October 9th through October 19th at WJCT Studios, and the tickets are available now at abetjax.com. Rains Carr, thank you so much for being here
Thank you
today.
so much, too. Have a great weekend.
And good luck with the show.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And that's our program. Thank you for listening. You can email your feedback or suggestions to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. If you missed anything, catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight. You can also find our entire archive on the First Coast Connect YouTube channel and at WJCT.org or on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to listen Saturday at 4 when neurologist Dr. Joe Servin and his panel of medical experts delve into the month's biggest health headlines, from vaccine guidelines to kissing bugs. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett, and our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Michelle Coram and Andrew Wickman manage our sound and video boards, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com. Tidbits, family owned and operated since 1985. 4 locations: Bay Meadows, Hendricks, Mandarin, and now Fleming Island. Menu items include fresh sandwiches, salads, and soups. Open Monday through Saturday. Online ordering and menu at clarastidbits.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.